Hey everyone, welcome to another Corona tutorial. Today we're going to take a look at Corona Scatter and specifically how to use it to create some scattering distributions with some advanced effects such as using curves, open or closed curves to exclude certain areas from the distributions, as well as using meshes to exclude some areas or include some areas in distributions. I will also show you how to adjust the distributions of the instances based on the slope of the surface. We can also try to adjust the distributions using some advanced procedural textures. And basically, I'm sure many of you are familiar with ForestPack, which is one of the most popular scattering plugins for 3ds Max, and I'm sure many of you know that it offers some of these advanced distribution options. And I'm definitely not saying the Corona Scatter is not going to improve in this way as well, in a way that those options will be more accessible right in the user interface of Corona Scatter, that you won't need to do any manual kind of map wiring to get these effects. But if you are using Corona 1.5 and you need to create some of these advanced distributions right now at this point, then there are some tricks not many people know about, with which you can achieve those results right now with this Corona version. So let's get right into it and let's overview our scene which we are going to be working with. So there's ground, simple kind of terrain ground. Then we have little house, and this house will serve kind of as a example of the area where we do not want any foliage to grow in. Then there's our foliage, the two trees and a few clumps. There's some weed, which is like the tall grass. Then there's regular grass, some dead dried grass, and some dandelions. And this is pretty much all we are starting with. So obviously one of the first steps will be to create Corona Scatter. And let's call it scatter grass, so there's some organization in our scene. Now distribute on objects, distribute on the ground. And what do we want to distribute is all the grass. Now you can see all the grass appear. It won't be probably as automatic as this with your scene, because I've already set up the scatter once and it stuck the settings in there from the previous scatter. So the difference is I'm displaying only 0.05% of all the instances in the viewport, so it remains fast. Scale is randomized from 100 to 300%. There's random rotations from minus 180 to 180 degrees, and I'm scattering 400,000 instances. Now we had some weed in the mix, and we can see it here, and I don't want the weed or the tall grass to be as frequent as the rest of the grass, so I'm gonna decrease the frequency of both weed meshes to 0.1, so they have only 10% of the probability of appearing. Okay, so if we look closely, this is kind of the simple grass distribution, and the first thing we probably want to do is, if we go to view and look here, we can see there's this nice little path going across our terrain, and obviously since people walk there, the grass will be mostly stumped, so there won't grow much of it, and therefore we do not want any grass to be scattered in there. So Let's make this transparent, disable the wireframe, and create a spline across our path. So just a few clicks, make them all smooth, and do just a little bit of tweaking. So we get the spline right on top of our path, like this. Okay, so now once this is ready, I'm gonna quickly go here and grab our ground material to do other slate editor view, so we have it at our disposal. And I'm gonna show you something. There's new distance map in Corona 1.5, basically the map which creates fall off based on the distance from the object topology, and it can be used with the splines as well. So I'm gonna assign this material to our ground and this distance map as a diffuse. And you would immediately think, so I can use this distance map to select this spline and drive distribution of the grass with this spline. The issue is it doesn't do the projection of the spline in the z-axis. It works in the 3 dimensions. So if I add the spline here, make sure the color far, let's make color far dark gray, or let's make color near completely white. And what you can see is, as I move the spline, let's increase the distance to, let's say, 2 meters. Obviously, in some places, like here, the spline is really close to the topology, but on the places like here, it's more distant. So it doesn't do the Z projection, it does it in the 3 dimensions. So in order to use this spline as a mask, we first need to extrude it and push it down, and voila, there's our mask. We obviously do not want this to be renderable, and we do not want it to be too obstructive in the viewport as well, so I quickly made it see-through. Now this is better, and this we can work with. So let's go back to an isolated view. Let's assign terrain material back to our terrain, and let's wait for the autosave real quick. There we go. So let's take our scatter, our spline, and our ground, isolate again, so we can focus only on these 3. And obviously, where there's near color, near of our spline, we do not want any distribution, so that will be black. And further from our spline, we do want grass to distribute, so that will be white. Okay, let's call this path mask. Get rid of this material, we do not want it anymore. And the first kind of idea you would probably get is, okay, so now I will use this map to mask density of the scatter. The issue with this is that density is really a boolean. You cannot do gradual density adjustment. There's only 2 states. The instance is there or isn't there. So in the black and white case, it's easy. White is the instance is there, black is the instance isn't there. The grayscale here means the probability. So in case of light gray, there's high probability the instance will appear on that place. If there's very dark gray, there's very low probability that the instance would appear there. If there's 50% gray, then there's 50% chance that the instance would appear on that given place. What's actually better in this case is to map the scale with this map, which we are going to do now. But maybe we will be putting more maps or trying different things in here. So what I'm going to do instead is add output and call it the same name as this. Oops, there we go. And plug this into our scale. So with this little trick, we can always stay in our material editor, and we know this is the kind of like the shortcut to this slot right here. So even if we have selected some different object like this, we do not always need to go back to the viewport, select it, and drag them up all the way over here, especially if you have Slate Material Editor on the other monitor. So this is kind of like the pipe that leads to the scatter. So now let's plug it into pipe, make sure our scatter updates, and you can immediately see that the path is there. And you can also see that exactly like in the real world, there's like large grass on the further away from the path, but closer to the path there's smaller and smaller clumps of the grass. Whereas if we were to use the density mapping here, you can see the probabilistic way it works wouldn't really work well in this case. So again, let's use this and let's clear this. Alright, so this is kind of the easiest way you can exclude, for example, path from your instance distribution. And I'm sure many of you know in the Forest Pack you have some kind of advanced control over this distribution. So for example, you can tweak the fall-off curve of the scale distribution. So I can do the same actually in here. I will just plug the output map in between, enable color map, and I can, for example, make the size distribution so that the size falls off in kind of this shape from the edge of the path to the more distant areas away from the path. So if we now did this, we can increase the distance even further. This is with extreme O, and make sure our scatter updates. Or we can go the other way and make it a really sharp transition. Obviously, again, decrease the distance. And now you can see the fall off from the big grass patches to the small ones is extremely sharp and quick. I think in this case I prefer the more linear way, so I will just get rid of this. This output here. And again, make sure our scatter updates. There we go. So let's go back here, set it back to 2 meters. And yeah, this is it for the first example. The next example would be using the same thing but just with the closed curves. So let's create a circle. Oops, didn't want to do that. This circle. And again, we have to extrude it. So let's do that. Put a circle down, or its cylinder now. Make sure it's not renderable. And also, if we do not want it to obstruct our scene too much, we can always display it as a box if you want to. Let's duplicate this and call it circle mask, for example. Remove the line and let's add the circle and let's plug this one in and update our scatter. And now we can see we've excluded the circle, but obviously in this case you would most often want to exclude the entire volume of the object. So in this case just stick on color inside and make sure inside it's black as well. And there we go. Now you can exclude the areas. We can convert this to editable spline. We can take the editable spline, go to top view, and move it around in any way we want. Like make it this egg. And if we go back, then we've excluded this egg shape. And again, we can precisely control the fall off. So let's say it's 20 meters fall off. And now you see there's now gradual scaling up from the edges of our egg shape. And again, you can plug your output map in between and precisely tweak the curve of the fall off if you want to. So let's set it back to 2 meters. And now let's say you want to combine these distribution solutions. The easiest way would be to simply plug this, let's say, to the far text map and combine them this way, but there's a better way I'm going to show you later on, and I'm going to also explain why is it better. So first of all, let's just finish some setup of our grass. So let's make something that actually looks good. Okay. So we have the path excluded, but let's say now that we do not want the grass to be growing on the slopes because there are cliffs, the grass doesn't grow there. So not many people know it, but Corona Scatter actually supports fall off map. So we can grab the fall off map and let's call it slope mask for the organization. And we want to do perpendicular parallel, so let's keep it this way, but we want to do it in the world z-axis. And just plug this in here. You can see not much has changed yet. But now if we go to the mix curve, just make sure our scatter updates first and wait for the autosave. Again, there we go, that looks more like it. Let's just add 2 points, and we can now use these to precisely clamp the distribution of the grass where we want it. So this is gonna be how the sharp transition is gonna be, and if we select them both and move them, then this is gonna offset the distribution. And we can see we are doing the exact opposite of what we wanted. We are scattering on the slopes only. So what all we have to do is just swap these two colors. And we have exact thing what we wanted. We are now scattering everywhere except the slopes. So let's maybe push it even further in there. Actually, the other way around. There we go. Yep, this is something I'm happy with. So this is another thing. And next thing we want to do is to make sure that the grass doesn't grow right inside of our house. So if we take a look at the house, you can see it's now full of grass and we don't want to have that. So let's just quickly create a box, align it to our house, and quickly model kind of the outline of our house. Now there's this little kind of like porch or wooden step which we want to exclude as well. So just extrude this out and call it house bounding box, something like that. Again, make sure it doesn't render. Get another corner distance, label it house mask, add it in. Again, color near, color far. That makes sense. So let's go back to our entire scene. And again, take only the things we want to focus on with us. And isolate again. And once I plug this in, we should see that the grass is not scattering inside of our house, precisely like this. You can see how it ends right next to the house. We can increase the distance. And now the grass stays away from our house. So now that we have these 3 different masks, we can combine them. Again, as I said, it wouldn't be a good idea to combine them just plugging inside of each other, because if we have multiple scatters and we have them plugged inside of each other, then if we want to use some of the masks for some other scatter and have it linked, so that if we do change to this distance texture, it propagates across all of the scatters. If we have some other maps plugged in, then we cannot use it because we want to specifically use only this map. So a better way is to use mix, where this one will drive mix amount and this one will go to the white slot of the mix. And then again, get another mix. Again, this one result will drive the mix amount. This will go to the white slot of the mix. And if I plug this in and make sure it updates, now we have the distribution where our path is excluded, our slopes are excluded, and the house is excluded as well. So now, if we were to scatter, let's say, trees, so let's create a new Corona scatter real quickly. Call it scatter trees. Obviously, we do not want to blow this up, so let's say 400 trees at most and 50% display. Scattering on the ground, and what do we want to scatter is trees. That's a lot of trees. So let's adjust the size, randomization. We do not want to align them to be aligned to the normal. Let's decrease count to the 200. That looks better. That looks something like forest. Translation maybe randomizing z from like -3 meters or -2 meters to 0 meters. And now, if we create a new output, scatter trees. In this case, we don't want smaller trees on the edges, so we will be mapping density instead. But now we have this house mask, so we can already put house mask in the density map. And if I just isolate this, we can already see that we have used this. Oops, I forgot to grab the house. We've used the same map or the same mask to drive multiple different scatters. So we are now sure that none of the trees intersects our house, and if we do some changes to the bounding box geometry of the house, it will change our grass scatter as well as our tree scatter. So now let's play with the distribution of trees a little bit. Let's make the forest a little bit more dense. So let's say 500 trees. But let's make it in sort of small pools. So create noise, plug this here. Give it a moment to refresh. Maybe the noise is just not large enough. So first of all, we want to make sure it's swirled. And we want to clamp it, so there's not much of a grayscale going on. So let's use 0.5, 0.49, fractal so it's a bit more irregular, and make it really big, so like 2000. And now we are getting somewhere. Now we have the small islands of the trees. Make it 3000. And we can sort of play around with the offsets to get them the way we want. Just some, randomization. It's ridiculous, I think. Yeah, let's say we like this, for example. And now I want to combine it with the house mask. So again, this will be mix amount. And in the white slot will go the house mask. So now you should see that some trees maybe here disappear, but probably none because the house was somewhere where the trees already aren't. And now we have the trees probably on our path as well. So what we can do here is duplicate the path mask. We cannot keep it instanced because the trees will need bigger distance. So let's say 5 meters. And plug this here as a test. I am going to take the scatter as well as the ground. Just wait for the autosave to finish. Okay. And now, if you remember, I said that when there's grayscale, there's just probability. So we want to clamp this. So there's no grayscale going on. There's just Boolean black or white. So let's enable color map. Add 2 points. This one is gonna be 0, 5, or rather 0 and 0, 5 here. And the other one is gonna be 1 or 0, 5 in this axis, 1 in this axis. Okay, now it's a real clamp. And if we increase the distance to like 20 meters, we now have all of the trees staying away from the path. We can go to like 10 meters, so they are a bit closer to the path. And again, once this is established, let's call this path mask white. We can again, let's call this trees mask noise, so we know what is what. We can again combine them easily into one thing. So now you can see we have the random distributions of the trees. Trees will always stay away from the house, and trees will always stay away from the path. Okay, this looks great. And the last thing I'm going to show you is why we did this split of with the mix maps in the first place. We're gonna take the ground and a flower, create new kernel scatter, call it scatter flowers, new output scatter flowers, and put this into the density. We do not need size fall of here either. So again, let's set this to something really tiny. Ramp up the count. We're going to distribute on the ground, and we are going to distribute our dandelion. Just give it a second. Oh, and obviously we want different distributions from the trees, so this really won't do. That's better. And in the case of these flowers, we want like the natural pools of the flowers. We do not want it to be like the even distribution. So let's get cellular, plug this in here, and make sure it's world. Give it a few moments to update, and let's make it again really large. And the division color, in order to clamp our distribution again, so there's not much of the gray, there's more of a white and black. We'll set the second division color to the black as well. Now we have nice kind of pools. We can tweak the spread to make them spread more or less. So we want to spread them obviously less. Like this. Okay, this is looking quite nice. Maybe not so dense, so let's try 100,000. Yeah, let's keep it at this. And now for the dandelions, I want to do the exact rules as for the grass. They don't want to grow on the path, they don't want to grow on the slopes, and they don't want to grow in the house. So all I need to do is take mix. This network right here is the distribution rules for the grass, so it will go to the mix amount, and this is the distribution rule for the dandelions, these patches. So that will go to the white color, and that will go to the scatter of flowers. And if we wait for it to update, you can now see the rules have applied, and the dandelions do not grow on the road. But in the case of the grass, we used size. So let's, you know what, let's put it in the size. Just give it a second, clear it from the distribution. Now you can see the size messed it up as we have a lot more of the gray color here, so let's just bump up the spread. And use the output map to clump our result. Let's see if this works. Yep, it does. It does exactly what I wanted to do. So now we can see again we have those patches, but I did a bad decision here to put it in the density slot because I forgot that this network is set up for the scale slot. Okay, so now the rules work exactly as we want them. There's nothing growing on the path, there's nothing growing in the place of a house, and there's nothing growing on the slopes. So if I now go back, then we can kind of look at our entire environment. Maybe let's get a little bit more sun in there. There we go. Maybe disable on the contrast as well and increase the exposure. Okay, so I think this is it for the advanced scattering tutorial. I hope you found this useful, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.